There we go.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, I've never quite seen the. So, question actually, Virgin cover. Does it still have the name of the book on the spine?
The spine's blank. So
Okay, so that would just set me off on my like AC or I almost said ACDC OCD because it'd be like, what am I looking at? Where is it?
yeah. Well, I didn't take the spine into account. I will that
Well, I'm
well the
just not
spine.
sure. I'm not sure if that's like official policy for Virgin covers or not.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I will say the next book, there'll be something printed on the spine. They'll probably have the title on the spine because it will be a longer, thicker book. So, but yeah. Anyway, I'll go ahead and let my partner in crime here talk about his stuff.
Yep, I'm DB Fastbinder, also called Darth Bobcat, and the writer and creator of Confessions of the Magpie Wizard, available on Amazon.
Yes, it's pretty cool book. It's if you like kind of like light novels, you like anime harem type stories, or would it be fair to call this a deconstruction of a harem
Um,
story?
it's got some deconstructive elements. Like I ask questions like, what kind of personality type would actually end up in that situation?
Mm. So, but yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, what uh, what Darth Bobcat is saying is
Buy my
No,
book! Buy my book! Buy my book!
no. Every
is
week he grates at my soul a little harder.
I, I think Jay Sherman is overstaying his welcome.
I mean, he gets the point across, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh, speaking of SNL, before we get started, I'm going to just tell. So, as you may have heard, Norm Macdonald passed away a couple weeks back, and he was probably my favorite comedian, just in general. And so, I'm going to tell a little joke that he told that is one of my favorites. So one day, a moth flies into a podiatrist's office, and the receptionist says, "Yes, how can we help you?" And the moth says, "Oh, lady, the problems I have. I work hard every day for Anatoly Bushenko, a cruel man with a small imagination, who got to where he is because he married into money and he lords it over me. And I go home and I lay next to a wife who replaced the beautiful young woman I married, and I have come to hate her, but I stay because, well, there is nothing else for me. But worst of all is my son, Leonid. I look deep in his eyes, and I see the same cowardice in mine, the understanding that everything is awful, but but lacks the courage to just end it all like me, and so I have come to loathe him." "Oh my," says the receptionist. That's quite an issue you've got there. But why did you come here? This is a podiatrist office. You need the services of a psychiatrist." "Oh," he said. "Well, I'm a moth, and the light was on."
Uh, and unlike when Norm Macdonald first told that joke, I didn't interrupt it. Unlike Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, geez, Conan. Although, yeah, the place I heard it first was he actually did this really awesome audiobook, or you can buy it as a book. But yeah, it was fun to hear him narrate it. And that was like a pseudo autobiography.
Hmm.
I say pseudo because there are some really ridiculous elements in there, like a Make-A-Wish kid who it's like, "Oh, Norm Macdonald's my favorite comedian. I want to go up north and see a seal." And he's like, "No, I want to club one of those little effers." I chose you because I knew you'd be easy. Everyone knows that SNL hasn't been good since the 80s.
Yeah. Well,
Well, I mean, that was the part of the joke. But
oh, it was part of the joke. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember when he hosted SNL like a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how when they fired him because he wasn't funny enough, but that's not really why they fired him.
Yeah,
Uh,
he wouldn't
yeah,
let up on the O.J. Simpson jokes.
right. Yeah. And so they brought him back to host, and he said, "Well, If they brought me back to host, then this show must really suck. But yeah. So trying to find a nice segue between Norm Macdonald and what we need to talk about.
Well, so much like Norm Macdonald's humor is a very different product from how most comedians would tell their jokes. Like he's extremely dry, like razor edge, like dry.
Mm-hmm.
There are also different approaches to take when you're telling a story. And just one of the things I keep noticing, and I kind of want to do my little part to try and stamp it out, video game writing is not suitable for books, movies, and comics.
Right.
But I feel like it's been slowly, and in some genres like isekai, fast or quickly infesting it.
Yeah.
And so we're talking a little bit today about how just different those are.
Yeah. So when you think about a video game with a story, the video game story. So by the way, we're not saying that video games can't have good stories. Like there are a lot of video games out there that have incredible stories. They're
Oh,
just,
absolutely.
yeah. And I would say, like the original Knights of the Old Republic had a great story. Great twist in it too. Um, and but when you think about the way video games tell their stories, it's the pacing is a lot different than it would be, say, with a movie or with a TV series. Well, maybe not necessarily a TV series, but a movie or a comic book or a novel. Um, and I think it's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of video game adaptations don't do well when they're made into movies, because it's just
Mhm.
the pacing and the way the stories are told and from one medium to the other are completely different.
Right. It's why if you notice, like, say that Sonic the Hedgehog movie from last year, they didn't adapt Sonic Adventure 2 or anything like that. They just said, okay, so what do we need to know? We need Dr. Robotnik. We need Sonic to be fast. And yeah, let's just do a road comedy. Why not?
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah, it did. And yeah, that was a fun movie. And it took Sonic out of his element, took him out of his world into our world, and
Mhm.
uh, you know, gave him some human companions and stuff. Yeah, it worked. But then you take a movie like, say, I don't know, anything directed by Uwe Boll.
Okay, let's not pick on Uwe Boll. The German tax system has probably done that to him since they changed the law.
Yeah, and I don't want him to challenge me to a fight in the boxing ring, because I would get I'd get
Right.
my head
Well,
caved in.
he'd probably be injecting horse steroids for months in advance.
Yes, exactly. But okay, so like let's take a movie. Like think of a.
Uh, here's an easy one for you.
All right.
The Super Mario Brothers movie.
Okay, yes, that's a good one. Yeah, that movie took the original source material of that movie, or the game, and then the movie just turned it over completely on its head, and it went from being this colorful happy music running around getting mushrooms and all this stuff to this dystopian uh you know
Alternate
su- you know
universe
oh,
dinosaur.
yeah, it was like Blade Runner meets like Jurassic Park, and it
Oh,
was
yeah, and I think that's actually like I think what that kind of tells you is that the upcoming Mario adaptation is kind of doomed because I don't think that like Mario barely has enough story for a Mario game.
hmm
And I think that's like one of the big things about video games is that I'd say there are a few levels of stories in video games. There's the kind of the excuse premise where it's like, hey, you're a little so Bowser kidnapped the princess again, so go at it, Plumber. Yeah, go,
yeah.
go, run through 8 worlds.
Yeah, yeah, there's not much to it. And yeah, it's although I think the people doing that movie are the same ones that did the Angry Birds movies. And
Oh, I'm hmm. The,
yeah, and you talk about a game that has like no story to it at all. and then they managed to make some kind of a story out of it.
You know what? I actually watched that movie, and I actually ended up kind of enjoying it. So that gives me slightly more hope than I had.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I thought it was a pretty good movie. Definitely some funny moments in there. I haven't seen the second one, but
I don't think I think most people haven't, including those who watched the first one.
yeah,
Uh, Although I will say, with the casting on that Mario movie, if you had said DB, I would like you. Or what's your meanest parody of what you think Hollywood would do with the Mario movie casting that you could possibly do? That was basically it.
yeah,
God, the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia is Luigi. That just doesn't make sense.
yeah. Chris Pratt as Mario and Jack Black. Jack Black's Bowser, right?
That's basically the only one. Yeah, that's basically the only one anybody is like, okay, I could see that.
Yeah, but yet Seth Rogen.
Oh God, who's Seth Rogen being?
I can't remember, but God, I want to say he's
Well, I guess
God,
who else is there left? Like,
Toad.
oh God, that they would make him Toad, wouldn't they?
Yeah, God. Seth Rogen should not be working. I don't say that about a whole lot of people, but yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, so you have your video games where you kind of have an excuse plot. Hey, here's this generic structure. There's no, like, the stakes are go get the princess, but she's been captured 12 times before, so she's probably gonna be okay. But just just go have fun, kids.
Yeah.
Next up is maybe like where you'd have a Dreamcast or a PlayStation 2 platformer where you'd have some semblance of a story. Like, it was still very much, hey, go here, get this, so you can come back here. We can repair the rocket to get you to the next place. And oh no, you got to the next place and the bridge is down, and so you have to go gather the 15 nuts and bolts and bring them together to fix the bridge. Now we're across the bridge, and oh look, there's a lava field here. We need to go and get you a hover bike so you can go across the lava.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot of back and forth fetch questy stuff.
Sort of like the Rise of Skywalker.
see that this is why we have to stop the infection of video game stuff. And then it's like you have your next level of plot where you have something like Mass Effect or Final Fantasy, where the story isn't just like window dressing. The story is the meat of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like now, even those would have a very different pacing and tempo to a novel series. Like, I want you to imagine a novel series that was a let's play of a round of Mass Effect 2. Like, you'd have some good story beats in there, but you'd have so many unnecessary fight scenes in between.
Yeah.
And then they fought again. And then he went back and he fought again. And he was trying to get this special component to make this armor, so he went back and fought again. And then there was this DLC pack.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have like a 10-hour movie.
Yeah. And even the 10-hour movie, that would be a speed run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no side quests. Yeah.
Yeah. No, few romance options.
Yes.
Which is probably why, like, the Witcher TV show was a better idea than trying to make a Witcher movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I noticed is where a lot of the video game things, like, it's not even like they're trying to be like Mass Effect. That wouldn't be awful. And, being like Final Fantasy wouldn't be the worst either, especially if you had like a serialization.
Right.
The trouble is when you're used to, it's like when the main stories you consume are those in-betweeners where it's like a bunch of random fetch quests to advance the story. Because I think you've probably read at least a couple of books or comics or watched a TV show where it's like, this was just kind of fluff to get us from point A to point B. It didn't actually mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen quite a few of those, yeah. And it gets annoying after a while.
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker's that might be the highest profile example of video game style writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because for those of you who haven't seen the movie, You lucky jerks. It's basically the first what half of the movie, would you say 2/3, is
Yeah.
basically, oh well, we found this gem, and now we have to go to this planet where the gem is from, and oh, we stumbled across a spaceship that was buried in the sand, even though we fell through the quicksand into a cave that the sand is not falling into. Don't think about it. And we found the ship, and the ship has the way to the place, and the place has the bad guy. We have to beat the bad guy.
Yep.
Now, that would actually be totally serviceable for like a short RPG, especially if you like, you could pad it out with some side quests and things like that. But as a movie, it just feels like a bunch of back and forth nonsense.
Yes. And on top of that, you also had the whole thing where they thought Chewbacca died, but no, he didn't die, and then they had to go rescue Chewbacca, and then like,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, and then you had like, Ray she would always wander off, and do something else, and she did that like 2 or 3 times in the movie, or like 3 or 4 times in the movie, and it just pissed me off every single time. Well, there were a lot of things that pissed me off about
right.
that character. It just,
I, I mean, okay, I'm sorry, Finn. She doesn't actually seem to like you. You can just
yeah.
move on with life.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's actually another good point, is that in a video game, it's totally fine I've played some video games where if I really sat back and thought about the plot, it didn't make any sense. But did you really care too badly? Like maybe a little,
Usually,
maybe some.
yeah, maybe a little. As long as the gameplay was fun, it didn't really bother me that much. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. But and there's like things like here's a good example for you. Halo 2.
Mm,
So you may recall that Halo 2 ends on a big cliffhanger, and the last fight of the game is that you're actually playing as the Arbiter, not Master Chief.
yeah, I remember that.
And it basically ended on with it's time to finish the fight, and cliffhanger for the next one.
Yes.
Now we know, I think it was even known at the time, but definitely in hindsight, that the reason it ended on that note was because they ran out of dev time.
Hmm.
I think the plan was to get Master Chief to Earth in that game. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they would have even gone through all the plot of Halo 3 in the second game if they'd had enough time to work on it. And the technology, those guys were pushing the Xbox as hard as it could go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so it was basically just they ran out of time. Now, I could tell you that I have split a novel before, but I've never gone, well, I'm just going to make this, I'll have another side character fight the villain, and that'll be the end of the book, and then we move on to the next book. Closest I got was I took something that was a first or second act ender and expanded it into being a big fight. So I guess I kind of did that, but it's not like I was relying on gameplay to make people forget that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference, is just that if you're writing a comic book, you don't have gameplay to fall back on. The closest you have is art, and good art can only distract people for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. And it's something you have to be cognizant of, I think I said that right. When you're putting your story together, and it's sometimes that sort of thing is unavoidable, because if you're like Bobcat said, you're up against the clock, or you've got a budget, and you've got to get it in there. But at the same, but when you do that, though, you have to kind of make sure that there's enough there to kind of like at least keep the audience or the reader's appetite wet enough for the next story.
Right. You don't have the fact that, oh man, that was so much fun playing through Halo 2 to make you want to play Halo 3. Now, there are people I know, I'm actually one of them, who would rather play Halo for the single player campaign than play a bunch of multiplayer.
Hmm.
So for me, a bad storyline in there would really just make me unhappy.
Yeah, sort of like Halo 5.
You know, I actually enjoyed Halo 5 at the time, but it's it definitely felt weird to when I realized that I cared more about the alternate team that was hunting Master Chief than Master Chief himself, who was being kind of selfish.
Yeah. Well, you play more. Well, you have more playtime as the other team than you do as Master Chief, if I recall.
Yep, that's if it isn't actually right, it feels right.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what was happening in that game.
Yeah,
Like that story was all over the place. I have no idea what was going on. I know Master Chief was going off somewhere, and the other Spartan, the guy who played Luke Cage, was going after Master Chief, and but I don't know what Master Chief was doing. I don't know what
yeah,
like what's going on. I don't know Cortana is in there, and I don't.
yeah. So I kind of break it down a little bit. She'd kind so, and this isn't just a video game problem. This can be like a tight continuity problem. So in that universe, the AIs are based on a cloned brain of a person, and they eventually go through what's called rampancy, which is basically AI dementia, where they eventually get super dangerous.
Right.
Halo 4, Cortana was succumbing to that, and she got fixed by joining with this ancient computer that was made by the Forerunners. And she ended up taking it over and deciding, you know what, it's time for the AIs to rule the galaxy. Things will be better.
Uh,
So she kind of goes nuts. Well, Master Chief thinks that he can talk her down from it.
okay.
But the other team was going, oh, yeah, we got to stop him. We can't let them get together. Master Chief is, he's gone rogue. We got to stop him. And then they ended on a big cliffhanger of, hey, the AIs are taking over and there's only one ship left because only one AI rejected her offer to join her.
Oh.
So now see, but I was able to keep track of that because I'd played most of Halo 4. There was one section with snipers that I stopped at. F those snipers. Um, but I'd also read some Halo novels in the past, so I had context on some of the characters.
Okay.
So that's actually an excellent point. How often do you read book 5 of a series where they don't explain anything?
Yeah, not very often.
Yeah, like you read a Harry Potter book and you're going to have some sort of something to try to get you back up to speed.
Hmm.
You and that's the other thing. Like actually, the example of the sniper thing. Uh, I can't think of any book where I rage quit partway through book 4, where I said, "Oh, here, book 5 is out. Let's read that."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often or ever.
Right? Maybe in American comics, maybe where you go like, "Man, f this Hawkman comic." The next one's a new writer. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah. Oh, Bendis isn't writing anymore. Okay.
Okay, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
But that actually just goes to show you how for a lot of I would call Halo in that middle ground, like the Dreamcast, PlayStation platformers, where it's like there's enough storyline in the novel where you could like get invested in it, but it's still playing second fiddle to the gameplay.
Right.
And again, if you're writing a book, you don't have gameplay. You just have the story.
Right.
Uh,
And yeah, same with movies too. Yeah, you just have the movie.
yep. Although I guess the equivalent of that would be an action movie where the plot is an excuse to get from action scene to action scene.
Yeah.
But even those tend to be more coherent,
Hmm.
or they're so balls to the walls insane it's wonderful.
Like the Mortal Kombat movies.
Yep. Oh man. Speaking of video game movies, so Mortal Kombat was one where there was enough lore for them to mine that they could actually make one good movie out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'd actually, but it's because it was a bog simple story. It's like, so there's this evil place, and they keep winning tournaments, and if they win another tournament, Earth is doomed. And here's all your fighters, and go Mortal Kombat. Do.
Yep.
You don't need a lot more than that. On the other hand, the new Mortal Kombat movie, oof.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Mortal Kombat fan, but that made me offended for the fans of the series. How do you have a Mortal Kombat movie without a tournament?
Yeah. Well, how do you have a Mortal Kombat movie without Johnny Cage?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
he could come in next movie.
Yeah, if they're going to make a next movie.
I mean, it's possible, but not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be watching it.
No, I'm not either. Well, that was the other problem too. Was the main character, the lead guy in that movie? I'd never heard of him before. Of course, I never played Mortal Kombat really.
So interesting thing there. He is actually not a character in any game. That he was like the executives insisted that they put him in there. Well, like, and he had literal plot armor. That was his superpower.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Now, of course, the biggest, I should say, the biggest offenders in this are a couple of genres that are just trying to adapt video games: isekai in anime and gamelet. And boy, let me tell you, it takes a special isekai to make me the least bit interested. And gamelet, I don't think I've ever enjoyed. Oh, that's not true. There's one series called Dungeon Lord that I read where I actually liked the second book. Because so in a video game where you're progressing, so there's a few different ways you can progress in a video game. You can just have like an actual level system where you get better equipment and you get better stats and everything as you go on. So you hit level 100 and you're just a certified badass. Then there's like more subtle games where you go back, play the game a couple dozen times until you're actually good at it, and then suddenly you're beating Sonic the Hedgehog levels in 2 minutes instead of 5.
Yeah. Or
you're figuring out how to use the warp whistles in Mario Brothers 3 to beat the game in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, Chengus.
Hey, Chengus. But so I think that the one isekai that just completely failed at the whole let's make a gamified storyline thing was this one called In Another World with My Smartphone, which I watched with my friend Jimmy just because it was a thing to watch.
Yes.
And it wasn't like it wouldn't even make a good video game because the main character was so overpowered it would be boring.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically the idea is, the character died and he wasn't supposed to die. So God said, well, I can't bring you back in the same world, but I can put you in another world. And since I killed you there, let's be nice. I'll give you this smartphone that you don't have to charge, and it can do things. Although the smartphone actually almost never comes up, which is funny. It's like, you can do things like you can navigate around the world with it and read news articles from back home. It's like that. Can I talk with anybody? No. Okay. And then but it's like, we'll also give you superpowers, and we'll give you super strength and durability, and we'll give you all 4 zones of magic. How much do most people get? 1. And so what's the conflict? Psst, you're just collecting waifus.
Well, that's a conflict in and of itself. I mean,
no. Conflict would be, oh no, I can only choose 1.
Oh,
or
yeah.
Oh no, I'm in love with so and so, but her sister keeps going after me too. How do I deal with the situation? No, this was more like, it was not Wunderbar.
Ah, yeah.
And there were some like interesting set pieces and things, but it's the type of thing where if it was a video game where it's like it is the problem of coming at it like it's a video game, because it's like, okay, so from a video game character it would be really awesome if he could like jump really far and hit really hard. Yeah, that sounds great. Oh, and maybe over time I could your character could unlock 4 different quadrants of magic, and yeah, because we got 4 different direction buttons here for us to play with on the controller. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay, and then you can just like you can build a party, and let's just have you keep accumulating party members. That actually sounds like a decent template for action RPG. And so you wouldn't notice that there wasn't really a lot of conflict. It would just be like, hey, we're going to the next level. Cool. Floating castle with a overgrown with a jungle. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Conflict. What's that?
Yeah. Right. We've talked before about how what do you call it? Shield Hero is one of the only really interesting isekai from a storytelling perspective, because boy did it introduce conflict early on.
Yes, it did. First 2 episodes.
Yep. Got Me Too'd and cast out and has to build his way up, which actually would make for a much more interesting video game too.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that there are some writers who are accustomed to video games and being overpowered from the jump, who don't think about the consequences that their powers would have on things.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah, because it's the especially like later in the as the story progresses, if it's a like if it's an RPG and your character gets stronger and stronger and stronger, then it's just like then it becomes to a point where they're just completely overpowered, and then then they throw that into like an isekai type story, and then it's like it's boring as hell.
Right, because the problem with most isekai stories is that they're made for people who really love, especially Japanese RPGs. And the thing about a lot of these Japanese RPGs, they're not even based on things like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy. They're based on things like Phantasy Star Online or things like that, where what's the fun of the game? Oh, it's getting a group of friends together, taking on different roles and attacking these dungeons. Yeah. Okay, so how do we turn that into a narrative? Oops.
Yeah. The only I guess you could call it an isekai, but the only one that could that I thought did at least try to do something different was Sword Art Online, SAO. Where they kind of introduced the whole thing where, especially in the first season, where if you die in the game, you die in the real world. Like the Matrix.
Right. You have some real tension and conflict there.
Right.
That was actually. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say. Then after that, they kind of got weird.
Well, it's because that was his first novel, or at least his first web serial that he was trying to submit to a light novel contest. It was actually too long for the light novel contest. And it was designed as a one and done story. And then he got published with his Excel World series, and they said, hey, you got any more content for us? Well, I got this Sword Art Online thing. Dusts off, removes the infamous glop scene, which I cannot describe on YouTube without without issues.
Yeah.
But remove that and just modify a couple of things, and you're golden. And then it's like, okay, what happens next? Oops, another game.
Yeah.
Really? Why would Kirito ever play a video game again? Especially a full dive one, maybe. Because otherwise we can't have superpowers. So please shut up.
Yes. We'll put his girlfriend and make her a prisoner in there.
What? Okay, so after we have, so you can be made a prisoner in this new game. Yes, because it was built on the code of SAO. Yes. So you realize that like every country in the world is going to ban these full dive RPGs after this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Kind of like, you kind of have to like think ahead with these things. Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if this was primarily a video game series, you wouldn't think about it so much
Hmm.
because it'd be like, oh, I mean, okay, so we had like imagine if there was no SAO light novel or manga or anime or anything, and it was just a video game. That would be like that actually be a pretty kick-ass video game. You just have this sword-based RPG where it could be like Soul Calibur but mixed with World of Warcraft.
Hmm.
And you have to fight your way through, and you eventually get out. And then they come out with the sequel where they add some flight mechanics, which is what they did in the anime. Oh, we have flight mechanics, but it's a similar world, and now there's magic.
Hmm.
So we've expanded the premise there, and then maybe like third season. Oh, it's a whole new game, and we still have some of the sword mechanics, but we've taken away the flight mechanics. But now there's a whole gun game for you to play. With you can gather different guns, and okay, so that didn't do as well as we'd hoped. So we're going to go back to the true spirit of SAO. We'll have another game where it's back to the swords and the sorcery.
Yeah.
But we'll have new characters you can meet, and you have to keep the game world from blowing up.
Yeah.
So it's like that would be a decent progression for a game series, and actually probably that actually seems to happen a lot. Where first game reasonably competent, second game they refine the concept and add cool ideas that felt like they should have been there to start. Third game they might nail it. Fourth game, Mass Effect Andromeda. Where either due to the team moving on or incompetence, they screw it up, and then there's like the apology game.
Yeah. 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 So that's a very good way of highlighting how that sort of storytelling can work in the video game realm, but maybe not so much in the uh, manga or anime realm.
Yeah, and it's especially noticeable in a lot of gamelit because uh, there's a lot of powers that you have in a video game that you don't think about how much they would unbalance a story and make a writer's life hard.
Hmm.
Because balance in the video game is you make a villain or you make like let's say you had a power where I'm just going to be a little facetious here. You have a power where you lock eyes with a villain and then you can do a DDR sequence where you dance them to death. Like they have to match what you're doing because you're hypnotizing them. Now that would be like an interesting finishing move for a action game. Can you imagine trying to write around that?
No.
Like you'd have an easier time of it in a comic because you could go, hey Bogdan, we're doing another dance scene here. Draw some arrows on the screen to simulate the dancing and have Jessica shaking back and forth. Prose, God, that would be death in prose.
Yeah.
But then you'd have the question of, well, but the other thing is like, there's no such thing as bosses in novels. So I'd be like, okay, so if Jessica can do this when she meets the ice lady, why doesn't, or the water elemental, why doesn't she dance her to death? Oh, because she's a boss, she's immune to it. You don't want to make it too easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised that you don't see that particular mechanic more often now that I think about it, just because
Yeah.
it would break things. I mean, it's basically the God of War style, I guess. Just I'm putting it differently.
Yeah.
Just instead of up, up, down, left, right, up, up, left, right, right, right. It'd be more like hit triangle to rip off his skull.
Yeah. And the former you were just describing is a big reason why I never liked fighting games. because I could never do that. Could never pull off the combos. I could never do the BBA up down left right flip. No.
Yeah, no, that. Uh, yeah, that's just basically. Yeah, it's like powers that would be awesome in a video game totally would destabilize a actual narrative-based story.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just. And you can tell when they've overdone a power because next game comes out. Hey, you know that one-hit kill that Kirito had in the last game? That's gone now. No, you can't do that in a book. You got like, well, once Kirito has an ultimate technique or an ultimate sword that can kill any opponent with one slash, even if he misses, you got to figure out a way to either series is over or you got to write that out.
You got to retcon that somehow.
Right? You can't just go, new game, new mechanics. Shut up.
Yeah. Don't think about it too much.
But reading is a process that involves thinking, you say to the writer.
Yeah.
That is why I think you have more so bad it's good movies than books, because the movie will play itself while you're struggling to figure out what you just watched.
Yeah. I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not.
Yeah. Whereas did you know that The Room was originally supposed to be a stage play?
No, I didn't know that.
It was also going to be a novel at some point. Because he's an interesting man.
Yeah, that's one way of describing him. Yes, Chinggis. Oh, hi, Mark.
He's a national treasure, even if I'm not sure what nation.
Yeah. We don't even know if Tommy Wiseau is his real name.
Yeah, it's the disaster. I would say the Disaster Artist, the book, is better than the movie because you get a lot more insight into him. It's like meanwhile, so bad it's good video game. I mean, Goat Simulator, Surgeon Simulator. Usually, a lot of these janky simulator games are so bad it's good.
Mm-hmm.
You also have games like Sonic 06 where it's awful, but it's just mesmerizing. Like, how could you do this to yourselves?
You had one job.
If you had just let them have another 6 months and forgotten the whole need to have a big anniversary game,
yeah,
you might have had something.
Yeah, or the aforementioned Mass Effect Andromeda, where they just really didn't start working on the game until about the last year and a half of production.
Yeah, because they spent too much time farting around with procedural generation.
Yeah, and then handed it over to the B team and gave it horrible facial animations, horribly written dialogue, and marginally good gameplay.
The multiplayer was all right. Apparently, Mass Effect 3 was better, but I never really played that one, so.
Yeah. Just, yeah.
I mean, that is a good experience there.
Yes.
Oh man, I love the bit where Mephiles is talking with Blaze and what's his name, Silver. Like his whole thing is like this. He's this Chad gamer. It's like Blaze. I have not been in the company of a woman for many years. It's nice, but you, beta orbiter male. Oh, yes, keep that up. Your pathetic moans make me feel smarter and stronger by comparison.
Oh god.
And like the funny thing is about that's actually another one where you can. I swear there's like a generation of webcomicers who played too much Final Fantasy when they went to make their comics, and then they not realizing that our topic today, where you have to think of your medium for your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't just have a fight scene because there should be a fight scene here.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a in a book. You don't have a fight scene just for the sake of, well, they paid for 40 hours of content. I guess we'll give them. I guess we'll throw a mob at them at this point just to extend things a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it just doesn't work that way.
No.
But I will say, like, if you're, if you're taking like a video game like thing or maybe like adapting a video game into like a television series, like what we were talking about earlier with The Witcher, where it was, it actually does kind of work. And I would say another example would be with Castlevania. Um, because that series was an anime, and they basically took I think what Castlevania 3 turned it into and spread it out over 4 seasons.
Which those are two very different shows from a production standpoint. Because like The Witcher has the whole novel series to draw from plus the video game itself, where so you have a lot of material to mine. Where for Castlevania 3, that was that an NES or Super NES game? I can't recall.
I think it was Super NES.
Right. Either way, Super NES game, you're not going to have an awful lot of lore to draw from, so you can just you can kind of just make up your own thing as long as you stay in the same general wheelhouse of it.
Yeah, and you let a guy like Warren Ellis write it.
Not anymore.
Well, not anymore, but
him too.
Yeah, him too. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah.
Let's hear. Yeah. So I think that I think I've said most of what I wanted to say. Just basically, please, if you're writing a story, go read some books.
Yes. Yes.
The pacing, character progression, and everything else from video games does not translate to a good novel. Especially gamelit. Please, gamelit people, just you so very few of you actually have a story. You just like go, oh, I have these one or two guys who are just kind of very similar to each other and would probably resemble the author if I looked at them in real life. Going and scoring babes in a parallel world, where it's it sure is funny how every parallel world believes in polygamy and and are really cool with enormous orgies.
Jesus. Well, okay, I got something. I got something for that.
Spicy.
That would actually be an interesting take on like an isekai or something, like in another world where there's no sex before marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. A world where there's no sex before marriage, and the protagonist is an absolute horn dog.
Yeah, where there's no sex before marriage, and the princess has a amazing chaperone. Actually, that isn't an awful idea. Because unlike most isekai, that would actually have some conflict in it.
Yeah.
Like it could be like the guy trying to get the princess alone, and then her guard shows up.
Yeah.
It's always like a razor's edge of, oh no, you misunderstand me. She fell face down, and I just caught her by the center of mass. That's what happened.
Clunk.
Well, not an isekai per se, Shangus, but boy howdy, gamelit.
Yes. No premier. Yeah.
Well, yeah, most isekai are kind of sexless anyway, but that's like a lot of harem anime anyway.
Yeah. Because if it wasn't, then it would be
I guess it would be a hentai at that point.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Although there are some anime out there that really push that that boundary.
Yep.
They're a harem anime and a willing male protagonist, but they can't really show too much.
Yep. But you're amazed at what they do try to show.
Yeah. like High School DxD.
That was my first thought too.
Okay, so a little off topic here, but so like, where did this trope come from? With the nosebleeds?
I think it's based on Japanese folklore.
Okay. Because when a guy sees a woman with an enormous rack, like I've never seen seen their nose start to bleed or just. Ugh.
Yeah, it's
Oh gosh. Oh boy. Yeah.
exactly.
Pretty much. I have not had the courage to watch that yet, and I don't think I ever will.
I haven't had the self-hatred to watch that.
Oh, yeah, built that too.
I haven't had the hatred of humanity to watch that yet.
Yeah, I haven't totally lost faith in mankind yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well,
so basically, video games, it's awesome by the end of it if the hero can pursue every path of power and they can become awesome, conquering gods, because they'll be reset at the start of the next game, like Samus.
Yes.
And you don't have to, and the plot is really just an excuse. Which, incidentally, press F for anybody who gets invested in a video game series for the plot, because they're inevitably going to get left behind when they do a reboot to simplify things. You can't have a series where, like, I'm just going to use Sonic the Hedgehog for example. Okay, so let's say you wanted to follow the plot of Sonic the Hedgehog. So you'd start on the Genesis, or possibly a remaster port for the Saturn or the Nintendo, or a GameCube later. But then you play on the Dreamcast, or possibly a port on the Nintendo. But for Shadow the Hedgehog, you could play on Xbox, PlayStation 2, or GameCube. and Sonic Heroes would come to those three platforms too. But Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, which are the prequels to that, wouldn't. And then for Sonic 06, you'd play on Xbox 360 or PS3. That's a lot of hardware to follow that story.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't, and like you'd have about like, Changus, would you say that the two Sonic fan dubs that we keep talking about would max out around 3 hours combined across 2 games?
Oh, jeez. Oh man. Yeah, that's
or Kingdom Heart. Oh boy, Kingdom Hearts. Like, okay, so you start on the PlayStation 2, then you have another PlayStation 2 game, then you got to buy a PSP and a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy DS and maybe a Game Boy 3DS. I forget if there are any games for that, but there are also mobile games that totally matter to the continuity, including mobile games for non-smartphones.
Oh jeez.
And we eventually brought the game to Xbox One, but we also came out with it for PS3. But we didn't have the original games available on Xbox One at launch. So if you weren't a PlayStation kid who just bought an Xbox One for some reason, oh boy, are you going to be confused? They did eventually, but still, it's just video games and story is not the primary reason for most video games, and the ones that are the exceptions tend to be weird and have fandoms that are seen as weird.
Yeah, or they're or they're like the Telltale games where they're just narrative stories with quick time events.
Right. And the ability to screw people over if you don't like them.
Yeah, that too.
That was my favorite. That's always my favorite part in those Telltale style games, especially Life is Strange.
I haven't played that one, but I played go. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If you do play it, knowing your taste, I think you'll have the most fun if you just go with the attitude of F Chloe, and not in the lesbian way that the game makers want you to want to F Chloe, but just in every scenario you go, no,
No.
No. Oh, I have a choice between choosing between her and an abusive stepfather. Abusive stepfather doesn't seem like such a bad idea.
Yeah. Uh, well, I hate to bring this up because I know we're kind of at the end of the stream, but did you ever play Quantum Break?
I've played a bit of it. That one's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it has a narrative structure to it, and it was also like a TV show in the game too. Like you play the game, and then you have a TV show in between, like with all these little cutscenes or whatever. It was kind of interesting, but I don't know. Like obviously, it didn't catch on because they didn't do any more games like that.
Right. Probably just because it was super expensive.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. Like the game did well enough, from my understanding, but it's not like it was the next Halo.
right, yeah. Well, yeah, and there were some pretty big name actors in that game, if I recall. I mean, you had like the guy who played Iceman in X Men, and Mary from Lord of the Rings, and um, Lance Reddick. But yeah,
There's a reason that FMV games didn't catch on over time, and that's just because as soon as you could render things in 3D, that became the much easier option.
right, yeah. Rather than hiring a, in the case of Wing Commander, hiring a bunch of has-been actors to star in your game. Sorry, Mark Hamill.
As I say, has been actors, how completely hurtful and accurate.
Yeah. Although I will say, Tom Wilson, who played Biff in the Back to the Future movies, he's Maniac, who's one of the other pilots. He was really good in those games. He was really funny.
I should probably play one of those at some point.
I'm trying to think where you could play it. It might be on Steam. I'm not sure.
It's probably on GOG, but I ran into a thing where I tried to play X-Wing TIE Fighter, and I realized that game is not at all mapped to a modern controller, or particularly well mapped to, like, when I was a kid, I would always have a joystick to play those types of games with.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd need a joystick to play Wing Commander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need a joystick for Q&A section.
Yes. Q&A. So, Chengus or anyone else who may be watching have any questions for us? Feel free to ask. I think we need the Jeopardy music. I don't have the Jeopardy music. Well, I get copyright struck if I play the Jeopardy music. Mr. Burt Reynolds. That's not my name. Okay.
More Norm Macdonald love.
Yeah. When's the Angels Awakening game coming?
You buy your 10,000 copies of Angels Awakening 2. I'll buy my 10,000 copies of Angels Awakening 2.
Yes, exactly. And
then he might have some seed money.
Yeah, then maybe there'll be a video game.
There's your stretch goal. 20,000 copies, video game.
Yes. Maybe in 2045.
You could probably do like a gotcha game.
Yeah, maybe.
Those don't take a lot of effort.
Yeah, but I would want it to be kind of like a I would actually want it to be more like a Mass Effect type game. Like a third person shooter.
Yeah, I could see that with like some dialogue.
Yeah. Oh, well, here we go.
When's the Magpie Wizard game coming? So since I make less money, you buy your 30,000 copies of the Kindle book, and Daniel will buy his 30,000 copies of the Kindle book, and then we can talk.
Yes.
Now, in all seriousness, I could very easily take the series and turn it into a dating sim. That was actually one of my original ideas with it. That's kind of how I structured it originally before I did my rewrites. But there's a lot of key nodes and choices where Soren pissed off or enticed the right person. So there's basically the first 4 novels can be considered the Kyo route bad ending.
Yeah, I could see that series being a visual novel. Yeah.
Yep, it would just be a matter of I'd have to get the commercial rights to a lot of art assets, and I'd have to learn how to program in RenPy, and man, it's hard enough just keeping up with my regular writing.
Yeah.
It's on the list of things to try at some point, but it's just it's it would just be a big investment.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see my series be turned into an animated series, like an anime.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have that than a video game, honestly.
Mhm.
For viewers and for mine.
Yeah, and that way you have the designs of the characters won't change, and the voice actors can be anybody as long as they sound like how you imagine they would sound, and then just animate the episodes.
Yep. I have thought about how you'd adapt certain things differently. It's because I'm kind of constrained by it being first person from Soren's POV.
Mhm.
And there's some action scenes that would have happened as the start of the book if he was around for them, or if I hadn't wanted to start where I started.
Mm.
So I have contemplated that occasionally. Where would a book start?
Yeah.
There'd be a little less talky.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or where would a movie start, I should say, or a
Yeah.
TV show.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Bobcat, any final words?
Buy my book. Buy my book.
Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my book.
Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Thank you all. See you next time.
Yep. Bye all.